So I just got back from my cousin's wedding in Michigan and a visit back to my family in Indiana. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I was going to make a video or not, probably because it was so family centric. I was like, okay, let's just like take the time to enjoy with the family. But after going through the weekend, it being family centric is probably the reason I actually should make a video, because these are the memories that I really want to keep forever. So I honestly didn't film too much content like on the ground, just to live in the moment. So this format of the video will be a little bit different with some narration, courtesy of me sitting at a middle school track while Dan gets his running in. Okay, backing up for some context. So my mom has an older brother. They're the two siblings. And the older brother, my uncle, his daughter was the one getting married near Lake Michigan. And I am personally such a big fan of weddings, particularly as a guest. And then, of course, when anyone in the family is getting married, get to go for a wedding, but more so also for a family reunion of sorts. So the first step was getting from Jersey, where my family is and where I grew up, to Indiana and Michigan. And we flew into Indianapolis, which objectively not the closest airport to the actual wedding. So we had to drive 3 hours to get there. But thankfully, the best part of a road trip is the food that you get on the trip. And that meant we got to visit Cracker Barrel. So the goal, and I always have a bucket list of food items for whatever trip I'm going on, whether they're domestic or international. And so the goal was to get like classic Americana, Midwestern establishments that I wouldn't necessarily be able to get in New York City or on the East Coast. So Cracker Barrel was a definite first stop. And I forgot, like I've been there once or twice before, but I forgot how extensive the menu is. And I will say, from the moment that we got into the restaurant, these were probably the sweetest people that I've ever met. It definitely feels like you have Southern hospitality, but you just happen to be in the Midwest.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Have a nice day. Thanks, you too.
And when I was talking about it with some people afterwards, they were saying that the Midwest hospitality is actually the best, because in the South, and I don't have much experience in the South, so you tell me in the comments if this is true or not, but like Southern hospitality, people are really sweet, but it's a bit fake. Like they're just sweet because that's just like the vibe, but they don't really mean it. But in the Midwest, they're sweet and they actually mean it, so that's why it is literally the best. And these are the kindest people, not only from the whole trip, but like some of the sweetest people that I've ever met in my life, from like the wait staff to the sweet lady grandma eating by herself sitting next to me, to the man who opened the door for us. I love that. And I feel like it's fun when you go to any like diner or brunch type establishment. So we got there about noon, and I feel like it's always a decision of, do you get breakfast or do you get lunch? And I feel like it depends. I generally, though, probably lean towards lunch, because I feel like there's more variety there versus wherever you go for breakfast, whether you're like in Michigan, in the East Coast, West Coast, like you're gonna have some standard breakfast dishes. So I felt like lunch would be more interesting. And of course, kind of in line with my bucket list agenda, I basically got their classic sampler, which allowed me to try all their unique classics specific to Cracker Barrel, from like meatloaf to their chicken and dumpling soup, which I wasn't sure what a dumpling was, but it's basically like a wide noodle, to their fried apples, which is kind of like applesauce flavors, but apples are pretty much intact, to what was the best thing though, which was their home style chicken. I'm not a fan of. It's like probably one of the lowest preferred proteins on my list, but man, this is basically fried chicken without the bone, so it was like a win-win-win, and it was so juicy, guys. So get the home style chicken, and I honestly want to just get that next time because that's how good it was.
Wow, you guys ready? Very exciting. Voila.
That was good.
And then about another hour and a half or so later, we make it past Indiana into Michigan. Truthfully, my geography sucks. So I, in my head, did not process Indiana and Michigan are near one another. Like when I think of Indiana, I think of Indiana, Ohio, Idaho, etc., like that part of the Midwest. So anywho, we take our drive, we get into Michigan, and then we're staying basically 20 minutes from the wedding venue in a place called Benton Harbor. More to come on Benton Harbor as we continue our stay. But I feel like after you have a road trip, or any trip really, you feel a little gross and you smell a little sweaty because we had a flight mixed with getting our rental car. So I think showering and just like freshening up was necessary. But thankfully our hotel was very close to a Walmart, which did allow us to get beverages. And we basically got the 40 water bottle pack because it was just like the best deal. So we were stacked on water the entire trip. So agenda for night one, this was Friday, was the welcome dinner for the wedding. And so the dinner itself, as well as the wedding venue, is basically at this place called Chick's Resort, which the groom, aka now her husband, his family owns this area. And it's basically like an old motel, I believe, that's on Paw Lake that they then renovated into some very colorful, cute little houses and some lodging. But it was like the perfect place to actually have their wedding venue, especially given that the groom owned the area. And I feel like at this point, you may be wondering, why Indiana? Like, why is that such a central point for where my family is from? Because you're right, there are not many Asian people in Indiana, but basically a little history and lore on my mom's side is that she herself immigrated from Guangdong, China, southern China, to Indiana actually when she was about 15 years old in the 80s. And basically she had an uncle that had come here earlier, built a restaurant, and that restaurant, they kind of sold the land to Walmart actually, and then that money that they gained was how so many of her family members were able to have the money to immigrate and come over to the US. It's partially, I mean, it's a big part of the reason why the restaurant industry and Asian restaurants are so important to me personally, because in a way, like, the restaurant industry allowed my mom to come over to the US, me, my dad, and then boom, like, in a way, that's how I was born. And then even my mom's older brother, aka my uncle, also had a restaurant in Indiana many years later. And so that's why the restaurant industry, TLDR, is just like near and dear to my heart. But that's the Indiana of it all. And then since then, I've always had family in Indiana. And whenever I get to go there, I feel like growing up, I don't know, like, Midwest gets a bad reputation because they're like, oh, it's boring. Like, you know, people are like, oh, there's nothing out there. It's just cornfields. But actually, I think I love that. Like, the moment we stepped out of the airport and it was just like open land and it was all flat, and the sky, the clouds looked unreal. It was so beautiful. And I feel like New York, honestly, in my opinion, like New York City is overrated. I live there, so I can say that. Like, I think every part of the US has such a beauty to it, and it was so nice actually being able to be somewhere that was just more rural and open and quiet. And I feel like the way of life is more relaxing, and you need that, you know? So anywho, into Saturday, which is the day of the wedding. So like I mentioned, we're staying in Benton Harbor, which is an area near Lake Michigan. And actually it's funny, like Dan, aka my boyfriend, and this is also my boyfriend's first official family trip coming with us, at least one that we'd have to take a plane, and then meeting the extended members of my family, so that was exciting. But apparently some of his coworkers were saying that Benton Harbor is actually an area that they know of and is pretty, so I was like, okay, great, that means we're gonna have stuff to do. So of course, even though the wedding is at night, we have a whole morning and afternoon. So the key agenda was, well, one, get a run in Michigan, because I feel like as I'm training for my another half marathon, just running in general, if I can run in another state, or like anytime in a new place I want to run, it just makes it a little bit more exciting. So we did actually get to run by the water, and it was kind of like, I felt like I was in like Outer Banks, or like The Summer I Turned Pretty, like some sort of movie where there are beach houses, and like it feels like understated upper middle class. I don't know how to say that, but it was nice. And I saw a snapping turtle. But after we did that, showered, then we actually went to Benton Harbor with my family, and it was just like, once again, like a cute little beach town. There was farmers market going on, and there's a cute little town to get some coffee, and the cafe was very dog friendly. They had dog like decor everywhere, so I was like, okay, green flag. And then of course, like, going to the actual beach itself. But I was excited because another thing on my food agenda list was, once again, regional like specialties or favorites. And so they had this pizza shop, which I'm gonna be honest, was more like a flatbread restaurant, but it still was very good. We got like one pizza that was like more traditionally pizza, like tomato sauce, the meats, cheeses, and then one that was like definitely have more of my alley and made me think of Thanksgiving and fall, but it was just our harvest pizza, which had like sweet potato and kale and bacon, and it was like a little sweet while being a little savory. So it was definitely flatbread central in there, but it was very unique. I don't know if that's considered Michigan style pizza or pizza of that region. Maybe it's just that restaurant, but either way, it was unique and kind of made me rethink, okay, yeah, pizza can really be different depending on where you go. And then it was time for the wedding. I will let the pictures just do some justice. I do love weddings for many reasons, because like everyone gets dressed up, and I do love having an excuse to dress a little nice and put on a cute little fit and a dress. And then into Sunday, which allowed us to actually go to Indiana and see my family. And this was definitely my favorite day of the trip. And like I said, it was kind of the reason why I'm like, okay, this has got to be a YouTube video so I never forget any of this. And I always say, like, YouTubers are always like, I don't want to cry on camera, and I don't want to cry on camera. Probably helps them in this public track in a middle school filming this. But let's just start first with a part that won't make me cry. But basically, as we were going through Indiana, we had to stop by Fort Wayne, and Fort Wayne is known for Notre Dame, the university. Do not know that. So we actually got to get a little college tour and get some brunch nearby. Pancakes, so textbook, so good. And then it was off to visiting Warsaw, which is where my family is from, and my mom grew up when she immigrated to the US. So we went to Warsaw. There was essentially like a little barbecue that my uncle and aunt put together, which I'm really, grateful for many reasons on this trip, but like they're like literally the parents of their daughter that just got married the day before, and then like somehow they put together this giant feast for us the next day, which I was really appreciative for. And I knew that it took a ton of work. I mean, from Peking duck to ribs to brisket to scallops wrapped in bacon, that was one of my favorite bites, to dumplings made with chives that they grow outside their house, to shrimp, a whole spread. It was literally a feast. And well, of course, it was so good. My uncle, as I mentioned, like my uncle and aunt had a restaurant, so my uncle loves cooking and like hosting people, and it was a really wholesome family moment that kind of reminded me of like when you have like family parties growing up, or like Asian family parties growing up. It felt very nostalgic. And then I had my other cousin who he's recently had 2 young kids, so we got to have more interaction with them as well. And I'm not a huge baby person, but I know that my dad especially is, so seeing my dad hold the baby, very cute. And I think the key moment though was seeing my grandma. So my grandpa, aka my mom's dad, had passed away about a year or 2 ago, and I haven't seen my grandparents in a while because they're in Indiana and they're older, so it's like harder for them to travel over to the East Coast. And so I specifically haven't seen my grandma. She was staying since 2018, so I call her Popo, which is in Cantonese for like grandma on your mom's side. And I feel tears welling in my eyes a tiny bit, but basically I saw her, and that's the sucky thing about getting old. Like, obviously it's bittersweet. Like, I'm so grateful and glad that she's still with us, and she's like been able to experience all of this and meet even her great grandson. But with old age comes health declining, and my aunt was telling me that she's starting to have like early onset dementia. And she, especially after she lost my grandpa, she just hasn't been with it as much. So I knew that I definitely really, really wanted to see her. What was sad though was, okay, I'll start with happy. Like, it's so good to see her, and I could tell she was really happy that we were all together. Not only me, like her grandkids, but also like, my mom visiting, aka her daughter. But I think the most heartbreaking part of it all was when we were sitting on the couch with her telling me and my sister that she feels like this might be the last time that we see her. And I feel like for someone people getting old, especially when they're your family, is just like heartbreaking in general. But for her to be in like quote unquote mental decline, but like still very clearly realize what she's going through, and like recognize that since losing her husband, aka my grandpa, that she has been a lot sadder. It was just so sad to see. And I feel like in the last couple of years, as I've gotten older, I've been a lot more reflective around like my family and like my relationship with my family. And I always feel like guilty that maybe I haven't been the best grandchild, because I mean, I love my grandparents, but you know, I always could have seen them a lot more, or you know, when I'm far away from them, I don't process all that they're going through. So this video is just basically a way to really remember this moment and just tell you all to cherish your loved ones. I know like people always say that and it makes a lot of sense, but just like even the little things of like calling them when you eat something that reminds you of them, or I don't know, just like making sure to even take photos and video where it's respectful. Was something I'll never forget. And I know that that was not the last time that I will see my grandma. Okay, and last thing I will say about the trip is, and this takes like a total 180 in terms of vibe, but something I don't want to forget is the fact that when we were trying to get back from Indiana, specifically Indianapolis to Newark, in this time of life, Newark Airport just, it's not doing so well. Like, they don't have enough air traffic controllers. It's known for having delays and cancellations. And oh man, we had to experience that, unfortunately. We had a flight from Indiana that was supposed to leave at 3. And then like every 30 to 40 minutes, they tell us it got delayed. So there was like 3, and then it was like 6, and then it was like 7, and then it was 8. And then at a certain point, so we're having to wait in the airport the whole time because like, okay, we think that there's a flight that's actually going to happen. But no, ultimately, it gets to be like 6-7 p.m. We're still waiting for the flight, but then they tell us that actually it's canceled. Ugh, bummer. It's weird, like this is my 3rd canceled flight in my life, but I've had them, my second one just like 2 weeks ago when I was going to France for work. So come on, airplane deities, let's not make this a pattern, please. But I will say we ended up taking the 6 a.m. flight out the next day, stayed in a hotel nearby, and it was really a growing experience, bonding experience perhaps. And once again, another way that this trip is unforgettable. But I am happy to say that we woke up at 3 a.m. for the 6 a.m. flight, made the flight, and returned safely back home. So that was my Indiana-Michigan weekend with a little bit of narrated voiceover all the way from a middle school track. Yeah, all I can say is go hug your grandparents or your parents or your guardians or your loved ones or your dog or your cat.